Let's give it a second. Blam, blam. Oh, where do we go for the links to the? Is it on the YouTube? Has the comments?
YouTube. Yeah, so we go to the actual live ASP.NET site.
And then we pause the YouTube. There it is.
Oh my goodness. I just control-clicked 3 times on my home link, so now I'll just wait. Oh, there it is. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah?
I need a new laptop.
Which one do you have right now?
Surface Pro 3. Still.
All right. Where's our lower third?
Oh my goodness.
Google. So we need to. This Google Hangouts is killing me. I want to. Damien, when you have like place, when you have mental bandwidth.
2018.
In 2018. Sorry. No, sorry.
I didn't hear any of that because I had a very loud, obnoxious ad playing in YouTube.
Scott, while he's doing that, I got to show you this. I'm teaching these kids this Lego robotics class.
Yeah? What is that?
It is a hermit crab shell with Lego posts on it, so they can attach sensors and stuff. It's 3D printed.
Freaking bizarre, dude.
It totally. Well, you tell a bunch of 4th through 6th graders, like, "Hey, you can 3D print stuff." They're like, "Let's put Legos on a hermit crab." Just why not? Because they're kids.
All right. Okay. Oh yeah, I was going to say that this Google Hangouts may go away. Like this is getting increasing. I'm just saying it's getting harder and harder to do this. And if you look at like Gmail, which hasn't changed in 10 years, I just worry that one day the hacks that we're doing to put together this show are going to go away.
Is there anything that we're doing that's super hacky now? I mean, we're just using the YouTube live thing, right?
I go to YouTube and then it launches hangouts.google.com with a special URL.
Use the quick start or whatever it is. Yeah.
I'm saying I don't know if it's ever going to work right. Anyway, we should look at alternatives. If the result goes to
this time, we'll actually look at alternatives, not like the other 17 times we've said.
Well, what'll happen is it'll go away, and then we'll have to look for alternatives. So, but I want to look at this, like the aerial spaces that we talked about. They can stream to Azure. We should look at them. Okay, John. Okay, let's start because there's
let's
people
do this thing.
Wondering why we're talking to each other.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to start with.
Well, I need to say hello.
Oh,
very important, John.
All right. Take 47.
Hello. All right, now go ahead, John.
All right, cool. Puma scan, or some may say Puma scan. This is pretty interesting. So this is one of those.
Puma.
This is one of those cool projects with a nice looking website. So you think it's going to cost you $2 million, but it actually is just okay. So the idea here is, it is an open source. It is a Visual Studio Analyzer extension built with Roslyn, and it uses the OASP security scanning stuff. So all the different OASP rules, and it'll scan your code, and it'll say like, wait a minute, you're doing this, and you know that's not a good idea, right? So unencoded literal text.
That's nice,
right? All that kind of stuff. And so it's all built with Roslyn. It's totally extensible. You can configure it and put in your own rules and all that. So very nice. And so this is like at design time, as you're building your code, it'll tell you like, wait a minute, bad idea, right? And out on GitHub. So very cool. So there's that. Hisham, he's writing about plugging in ASP Net Core middleware with MVC filters pipeline. So he's been doing some cool stuff at looking at, how filters interoperate and middleware. So nice.
That's a new feature in 1.1.
Cool. And I understand you're going to be showing some 1.1 stuff at the end.
So hang on, though. This is interesting. So you're taking existing middleware or middleware that you've written, a standard middleware.
Middleware.
And you're plugging it into the MVC filters pipeline. Does this mean that the MVC filters pipeline is a middleware pipeline, or that this is like an adapter kind of a thing?
There's basically an adapter piece, is my understanding. But yeah, you can plug in middleware as a filter. So you can have middleware that only runs, on a certain action method if you want to.
was very cool to see because there were those two kind of separate ways of integrating, and people would ask me, when should I use this or when should I use that? And it's like, well, kind of this, but you could sort of do both, whatever. It's nice to see the integration. So.
Yep.
Okay, so this is from, I always forget the names, and then it's way at the end here. This is from Fernando, and he's writing about APIs with Nancy FX 2.0 and Dapper all on .NET Core. So nice meaty post, tons of code, lots of pictures. So this is very nice. We have this.
Do you want to give a little more context?
No.
I literally have no idea what that post is about.
So to be clear, so Nancy FX is based on Sinatra or inspired by Sinatra, hence Nancy Sinatra. Sinatra is an alternative web API framework for Rails, and Nancy is an alternative web API framework for ASP .NET, and now it is arguably kind of an alternative ASP .NET parallel, kind of parallel universe. And then Dapper is a micro ORM. It's a tiny ORM rather than a kind of a fully formed and opinionated ORM. It's a give you exactly what you need and nothing more to get database information out. So scroll up a bit. Right there. No, you scroll too fast, John. Give me no, that's startup. Go down a little bit. Blah, blah, blah. Look at that. There you go. Zoom in on that home module right there for me.
Is this Zoom? No, not really.
Good job.
I blame the Hangouts.
There you go. Yeah. So this is just an alternative way of thinking about how to express a route and how to get feedback out of how to get some code to run. So the point is, as I mentioned, and I'll do a blog post on them soon, as I mentioned before on my blog, there's Service Stack, there's Nancy, there's Web API, and now because of the way middleware works, you can mix and match. So you can come up with new ways to plug things in that we never thought of. And if you then juxtapose that with what you said before, that you can take core middleware and plug it into MVC filters, the Lego pieces, hold your Lego piece up now, right? The free Lego pieces are now a lot more flexible than before, and you can pick whatever makes you happy.
Cool.
Okay, sorry. I just want to give a little context when we scroll quickly past stuff.
Okay, this is, oh gosh, I believe his name's Martin, I forget. So he is writing, he's got some helper classes for running Win32 services from .NET Core. So that's just kind of nice, a project out on GitHub. Pedro Felix is showing how to access HTTP context from ASP Net Core, and he kind of goes through and gives the history of, here's how it worked with System Web, here's how it worked with Web API, and then here's the difference with ASP Net Core. So explaining that. Two from Andrew Luck, as always. This guy's moving fast. So here we've got accessing service when configuring MVC options from ASP Net Core. So here's reacting to a previous post that we featured by Steve Gordon. And he was talking about, like how you can hook up or how you can get to services to get information when you are configuring MVC options. So that's nice. And here is adding cache control headers to static files in ASP Net Core. Published 6 hours ago, so nice and fresh.
Why don't we get caching by default? Go down there. I want to see what they think.
The static file middleware adds certain headers like e-tags and last modified headers, but it doesn't add expiration headers, obviously, by default, because that's up to the app to decide what
you don't know, right?
Something should be. Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know the intent is. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Okay, this is from Khalid, and he's writing on building .NET Core on Travis CI. So showing how to build your .NET Core or ASP Net Core applications on Travis CI. So just nice, quick, short one.
Travis CI is a
continuous integration system.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to call you out. I just want to make sure we add a little more because I feel like there's so many good. You've collected so many good links, but if you scroll too fast, then people don't know, and with no context, people don't know how cool these links are.
This is difficult because it's been 2 weeks, and I actually culled way down. People have been busy. So.
People have been busy, and this is like I say, it's a resurgence in .NET blogging right now.
Yep. And people building stuff on .NET Core and ASP Net Core. It's cool to see. Case in point here, Shannon talking about Umbraco CLI running on ASP Net Core. So that is cool. Umbraco, a content management system, very powerful. Does a ton of stuff, so that is neat. Two from Sean here. One is on how to test SSL with ASP Net Core. So showing, here's how to do it on IS Express, and here's how to do it without, and cross-platform, and all that kind of stuff. So nice post on that. And then just a real short thing. Here's a tweet from Sean on using ASP Net Core MVC versioning to version service APIs. So that's,
oh my goodness!
If you're not aware of that,
wrote a blog post about Microsoft making their life easier.
Well, it's a tweet, but I'll take it. I'll take it. So if you're not aware of that, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but this is a really cool. This is just one of the many goodies you'll find out on GitHub. Microsoft, and here the idea here. This is you can version APIs using. There's all kinds of different rules and versioning conventions, but you can do things attribute based, etc.
Well, because versioning RESTful APIs, it's like, do you version it in the header? Do you version it in the URL? What do you do? And this is a way to do that where you don't have to do the hard work.
Yeah. And versioning API is, of course, very important. You want all your clients to be able to smoothly continue working or to select the right API version, etc. Okay, here's a nice one from John Hilton. He saw a question on Reddit. I'm lost. I don't know where to start. So he's just pointing them at some options about how to do file new. So there's the obvious .NET new that you'll find out if you go to .NET. Also in Visual Studio, here's just the quick file new project. Here's how to do it. Here's what to click on, that kind of stuff. And he also points at the core template pack, and that's a Visual Studio extension that adds in some other templates.
Very useful.
Yep. Good stuff. So very cool, John, to see this common question here out on Reddit and just answer it and follow it up with a blog post. This is on, and I forget the name here, but this is on using MongoDB .NET drivers with .NET Core Web Api. So explaining how to do that. So meaty post, lots of code here. So.
Well, actually worth pointing out, this is kind of random, you could probably talk directly to DocumentDB, but a lot of people don't realize that we have a MongoDB API layer on top of DocumentDB. So if you have any existing code, whether it be this code or something else, anything that talks to Mongo will automatically talk to Azure DocumentDB.
Yep. Yeah, very cool. Okay, Bill Boga, always doing crazy stuff, flashing lights, IoT, whatever it is. So here he's talking about targeting .NET 4.5 running on Raspberry Pi. So just that's kind of interesting. So here this is mono, to be clear, but we've talked about just .NET on Raspberry Pi in the past and stuff. So always fun to look at that. So two of yours, Scott, I can't not feature these here.
Featuring mine? That is
I know.
So sweet. Thank you.
So I think we've talked about this a little before, but this is very, very important here. This training here from Microsoft Virtual Academy. So this is
so people,
nice,
I've had a couple of interesting comments on this one. First, people have been like, "Hey, great, that's lovely," but also people have said, "Why do you keep doing video content, and why do you keep doing getting started content?" And the question is twofold. One, we have lots of great docs, and we're getting more and more and more text-based docs all the time. There's always room for a good quality free video course. And of course, if you go to ASP.NET/free-courses, there's even more free courses on Core. There's a lot of people out there who want to learn by video. And another thing to point out about this is some people have complained that it's too slow. But they remember that they are already ASP.NET developers, and they want speed of they want stuff of a certain speed. This one here is really, really slow. It's been complimented that people can actually follow along and type while we're doing the work. So this is very 101 level stuff. So if it's not for you, don't watch it.
Yeah. But a lot of time those video courses from the ones I've done, a lot of time people like that. If they're just getting started and they want to kind of follow along and have someone explain something to them, that's a great level for that.
Exactly.
All right, and then Scott, you did another one on .NET Watch Test. So this is using .NET Watch, which runs something and can, you can run .NET Test by itself, or you can run .NET Watch Test, and it'll watch your code and watch for changes and update, recompile, and all that.
Right. And the intent call that command again. So in this case here, I wanted to be able to be typing a test in Notepad or typing some code in Notepad and just have it automatically, be writing. And then one of the things that I noticed, if you scroll up a little bit, and I went and filed a pull, not a pull request, but a comment. If you stop, it's when you say .NET test, I actually clipped out the I'm recompiling stuff. So I put in a little comment to say that I wish that the .NET CLI would stop telling me that it's recompiling my code, because I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, like a little switch or something like.
It's a little -q, /q or verbosity or something to tell me to chill out.
Cool. All right, so Matthias was watching our last stand-up, and he saw Damien talking about the logging and extending the App Insights stuff, and so he went out and he did some extensions to hook into Azure Log Analytics, which is yet another logging analytics thing that's we've got a lot of them, but this one ties in with the Azure. It's like an operation management suite OMS thing, and it ties in with this log analytics. Log analytics is kind of more, from my reading on it, it's more optimized for it'll run on premises, in the cloud, all different kinds of workloads and stuff, and it'll analyze tons of logs for you. And so Matthias kind of hooked that up to pipe your logs up into there. So that's cool. Okay, so now I'm ending up here with a few from officially Microsoft sources. So this is from Jeff Fritz, and he wrote on bearer token authentication in ASP Net Core. So talking about how, in this case, he was helping someone with an application that was backed by ASP Net Core, but it was working with mobile clients, and they wanted to be able to validate their JOT tokens locally, perhaps even without an internet connection. So nice post on how he did that. Announcement here. This is from Dan Roth. He's got a reminder that the DNVM scripts. So of course we're using .NET type scripts, but DNVM was the previous .NET version manager, and that those scripts are being removed. So if you're relying on those running on being hosted and running from GitHub and all that, they're being removed from the repo. So originally the date was October 31, and that's been postponed to November 28, but that's still coming up. So if you're relying on DNVM, you really should be moving on to the new stuff. Or I guess if you need to host those scripts yourself, host them yourself, right?
Yeah, I think it was actually part of the bootstrapping experience, downloaded the scripts from, there was a PowerShell snippet that you would paste in, you would copy and paste, and that the first thing it did was curl something from that GitHub URL. So that snippet will cease to work.
Okay. All right. Happy, exciting news. The ASP Net Core module, open source on GitHub. Sarab announced this, I believe, last week, recently.
Yep.
So that is exciting. Put Ben Adams to work. Yeah,
and so we acknowledge that it's functional, obviously, because people are using it and it works. It's nowhere near as fast as we'd like. This is the part that sits in the IES pipeline, starts .NET.exe. And then whenever a request comes in, and then proxies every request from IIS into your ASP Net Core application. It does that at the moment using the full Win HTTP native client stack. So it's not particularly efficient in the way it does it. But we'd love to get some work done on that to improve that.
Cool. All right.
But it is C++, so I can't read any of that code.
Nice. Okay, and then of course finally the big post from October 25th. This was announcing ASP Net Core 1.1 preview 1. So this is I believe, Damien, you're going to be talking a little bit more about this, but this is the kind of big release update. This includes some of the things we've been talking about over the past few months, things like the ASP.NET or the URL rewriting middleware, response caching, view components as tag helpers, all kinds of good stuff. So there's that, and I'm done.
So we call that preview 1 because it's like we're getting ready to do 1.1. We're getting ready to release 1.1. Here's a preview of that. Is that right, Damien?
Yeah, look, I'll be totally honest with you because I like being honest with everyone on this show.
I like to call it beta, but we call it preview.
I tapped out of calling things alpha, beta, and RC because no matter what we chose, people hated us. And so I said, fine, we're just going to call them preview 1 and preview 2, and we'll cop flack for doing that, but no one can blame us for using the wrong label.
That's why you should use cat names.
Why can't we call it
Exactly.
like Wheezy or whatever? Ubuntu has really cool names. I mean, right?
Yeah, because
Fancy marmoset.
that would only result in positive feedback from all our customers. So we're just going with preview 1, preview 2, preview 3. At this stage, preview 1 will be the only preview of 1.1. It's a minor update. It's just the first point release or minor update in the .NET Core sort of world since we released in June. This isn't just ASP NET Core. There was a .NET Core 1.1. I don't think there was like a ton of new APIs in .NET Core 1.1. I don't know any of them off the top of my head. And a crap load of bug fixes as well. So you can go and look at their blog posts and look at their GitHub repos to see all those things. So there's a .NET Core 1.1 preview, which is a new shared framework. So Net Core App 1.1 and Microsoft.netcore.app 1.1.0-preview 1- some horrible build number. And then we have all the ASP NET Core packages, which are 1.1. As well, assuming that we even updated those packages in this release. We don't always add features to every package, and so packages version on their own history, right? We're trying to use semver, which means in the world of packages, if a package doesn't change, you don't just release it because, right? The whole point of semver is predictable gauging of what happened when a package changed by looking at its version. If we just start shipping all the packages with new versions, just so all the versions line up, then you got to question why did we ever put anything in packages in the first place? So if a package didn't change in the 1.1 wave, then there is no new version of the package. The other thing that you'll see happen is if a new package comes along with new features like response caching is a new feature in 1.1, it's the first time that package has ever appeared. So the first version will be 1.0 because that's the first version of that package, all right? Because we're using semver. If we were to ship that as 1.1, because it's in the 1.1 wave, that could lead to confusion. So we had to make a trade-off there, and we've decided the packages version according to their own history or that of their dependencies, because if one of their dependencies changed, then we bump the version of the lower package to make it easier for people to get the latest of everything. But that's why you'll sometimes see packages that don't line up. We understand that represents a different problem, which is now if I have 27 packages listed in my package.config/project.json/cs_proj file, then it can be difficult to know if I'm currently on the latest, greatest supported packages. That's something that we're aware of, and we are looking at ways that we can address that either by way of meta packages, which bring their own problems, which we're trying to work around, or other features or experiences that we introduce in order to sort of ease that package management burden. Which has really been there now since we moved stuff to packages sort of in the MVC timeframe. But now that everything is in a package, it's only just sort of exacerbated the problem. So anyway, 1.1 is all goodness. It's preview, and the RTM of that will be out in 2 or 3 weeks from now, depending on if we find anything cataclysmic or not in what's left. The other thing that will happen is there will be a patch release. So we did a first patch release for all of .NET Core. So again, same thing, like, okay, in June, we did RTM. About 2 months after that, we went, okay, what are the critical bugs? Let's do a 1.0.1. Again, I'll use quotation marks because that's an all-up version number that represents the entire wave, but any given package might have a different version, right, depending on its own history. So we did a couple of fixes in Kestrel and a couple of other fixes back in August, I think it was, and all the way through .NET Core. There was a 1.0.2 sort of mini release that we didn't really publicize much a few weeks back because we had to fix something with Mac OS. But in November, there'll be a 1.0.3 point release for .NET Core all up, including ASP NET Core. And there'll be a bunch of fixes across a whole bunch of things, including Entity Framework Core, ASP NET Core, Kestrel, .NET Core. And these are sort of critical, or very hard to work around, very annoying bugs. These aren't things that have workarounds that are easy to apply that don't make you squint and vomit when you look at the workaround. We don't tend to fix in patches. These are important or critical fixes, and so there will be a regular cadence of these fixes for the whole .NET Core stack, which we'll address every few months based on feedback we get from customers. And we just approved a couple more today, which will probably be the last two that we approved for 103 for ASP Net Core. I think one was to do with if you use webhost.run in your program main, which everyone does, but if you're relying on webhost.run to return after the application has actually shut down, for example, if you send a Control-C, there is a timing issue at the moment, which may result, if you have code inside the application that listens for the application shutdown event and then tries to do some cleanup, we may actually return and exit the process before that code has run, which is like terrible, terrible, terrible. And so we're fixing that. And I think there was a Kestrel bug of some sort or some other bug. No, it was an MVC bug to do with the authorize filter that we're looking at fixing as well, to do with ordering of those filters, where we want to reorder that to make it people more successful when using the authorize filter with, what was it? I think it was anti-forgery. There was a situation where people might have run into this in their apps. You are sitting on a page on your app, like a form, and then you leave it open in the browser for 25 minutes. So your login token expires. Say you're using a 20-minute timeout for your cookie. So that means your token expires. So then you fill in the form and you hit enter to post the form, right? You're now unauthenticated. So what should happen? Well, you would kind of expect that you would go over to the login screen, right? Because the first thing should happen is go, oh, you're not authenticated, thus you're not authorized. I need to redirect you to the login. Because of the order of those filters, the anti-forgery token filter was running first. And so it would fail the request saying, well, this token is invalid because it's not associated with the correct login ID 400. So you get an error page. And if you hit F5, you get the error page again. You hit F5, you get the error page again. The only way to work around it was to hit the back button to go back to the previous page, which of course was, if it was authorized, would now take you off to the login page. So that's really not a nice experience.
What does the whole post redirect get? Isn't that that's not related to that?
That's not really related because the post redirect get, I couldn't even get the post to work. In this
the post fails, right?
The post fails, right? So yes, if the post succeeded and there were no errors in the form validation, then I would expect a get, a redirect to be sent back to me so that I would then do a get to the result page. But yeah, so we're trying to fix that as well. We're just determining whether there are any side effects in changing that order, because the bar for the bug fixes in this train, like in doing the 1.0.x patches, is quite high. We don't want to accidentally break people's applications when we're not forcing out these updates, but we say we're recommending that people install these updates because they contain fixes. And in fact, if you're trying to get support under our LTS, Dotnet Core LTS support policy, you must be running the latest patched version of the packages and components that you're using. So we want to make sure that we're not breaking people. All right, that was a lot of stuff just to talk about versions. 1.1 preview. I do have some things. I updated the website, Live ASP Net, to 1.1 preview last week. And you know what? It was painless. Like, I kid you not. I did.
Painless Microsoft employee says it's painless, or
No, like, I mean, I updated this something. We built the site, what, back in beta 4 or something, beta 5, and I updated it from beta 5 to beta 6 to beta 7 to beta 8 to RC1 to RC2 to RTM, and some of those were quite painful, I will tell you. And I would have had trouble getting it to work if I didn't have the people next to me. This one, I updated a bunch of versions. I mean, I'll show you what I did. Let me share my screen. And I then took advantage of a couple of the new features, which I will show right now. Tell me when you can see my screen.
Yep, got it.
Right.
Yep, let me lock it on.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So my project JSON file. Here's an example of our wonderful version number alignment. That's a terrible joke. This is the world of packages, right? So the actual runtime itself. This is like the .NET Core framework, right? If we were naming things for what they really are, this thing represents the framework, right? The .NET Core framework, the one that we...
Is that like a package of packages?
Yeah, basically. It's also a package that represents the folder on your disk, right? And we do this in our workshops, right? If I go to program file /.net/shared, right, here, it means shared for shared framework. You can see I've got Microsoft Net Core App. That package there, that name represents this folder. Okay?
Mm.
Yeah.
And so 1.0-preview1, oh my God, horrible build number, that's this thing here. So these two bits of information, this package name, this version, and the fact that I've marked it as type platform is what the .NET CLI uses to figure out which folder do I boot in. And here it is. Here's all this is more like a flat framework folder that you would expect. It's a bunch of system.blah assemblies, right? This is the actual framework. The actual CLR is in here, okay? sos.dll, so if you want to debug it. All right, so I updated that to its new version. I updated all of the ASP.NET packages to their new version, so preview 1-final. The tools versions, and again, this is just the state of where we are right now, because the tools haven't actually RTM'd yet, because we did the split between tools and runtime, because we're moving back to MS Build. They aren't on the same versioning train. Now, these ones didn't change. We didn't rev the Razor tools in this release, so they're just the same version as what they shipped with in June. This is new, okay? ASP.NET Core.mvc.razor.precompilation.design. And it has a 1.0 version, because this is the first time this package has existed. It's the first version, so it's preview 1-final, because we don't like build numbers on our public packages. And that's marked as type build, because I don't need that package to appear in the bin folder when the app is running. I just need it while it's being compiled. Okay, so that's new, and that package goes along with this tool down here on line 62, the Razor precompilation.tools package. So these two work together. I need a package dependency inside my app, and I need the tool that goes along with it, because when I run this tool to pre-compile my Razor views, it kind of talks to this guy inside the application by booting up my app, and they have a little two-way conversation in order to do stuff at design time. All right, so they're new, and I use those features to get faster startup time in my app, which is great. What else did I do? I updated my TFM to Net Core App 1.1, okay, because we're now running on .NET Core 1.1. And I added this post-publish step to actually invoke the pre-compilation tool. So there's .NET Razor-precompile, and I pass in, I don't know, 47 switches in order to make it do what I want.
Is that, what, out of curiosity, like those 47 switches, like how would you discover that? Copy paste from docs?
I copy and pasted that from the GitHub repo.
Doesn't that kind of feel like a thing where if that's what every single person has to do, then that should be the default?
I totally agree. So I already
so literally every single thing there, like remove them all and then just do the right thing.
You can't do all of them.
No.
Because this is how these compose. So in the MS Build world, when we go back to doing an MS Build, this won't exist, because these things will be replaced by tasks in MS Build, and they already have access to all this stuff ephemerally. So you won't see this stuff anymore. But with the way that the .NET CLI composes scripts and publish steps, this is what you have to do. You have to pass information from one step to another by use of these magic sort of variables. Right?
You can't pick it up off the environment variable because it's an environment variable?
It's not an environment variable.
That's not an environment variable?
Right. They're not an environment variable.
Oh, it's some magic.
It's magic. It's like MS Build properties, right? These are variables that are set by the thing invoking it. And then when .NET CLI parses this string before it says execute, it replaces these. They're replacement tokens. Okay. So this is one of the reasons. Anyway, this is like a mini build script, right? This is typically what build environments have, is the ability to do token substitution by declaring properties and variables and those type of things. One of the reasons why MS Build does this stuff really well. Anyway, Razor precompile though is just a command line tool, so it can't assume anything. All it knows is it's a command line tool, and it just knows what you pass in at the command line, right? Which is why you have to do it this way. But the framework one, for example, probably should just default to Net Core App, and so I did give that feedback. So that one should disappear in time for 1.1 RTM. So now when I publish my app, it'll precompile my Razor views. So I don't need to publish my views to the output. So you can see my publish options. I don't include the views folder anymore when I publish this app, because I don't need them, because I'm going to have a DLL. I can show you that. So if I publish this, and I'll just do it from VS, because why not? Why do they make me why do they make me create a publish name, profile name, when I just want to publish something to the output? It just seems a little, I don't know.
It'd be nice if GitHub would auto-generate a name for you.
Well, I don't want to. I just want to publish it now. Like, don't force me to make a name and reuse it. I just want to do it to a file system. So it's doing now. No, it's not. Somewhere. Where's my output? Is it doing anything? Did I hit the wrong button? Lack of visual feedback is... Okay. Try again. Oh, there we go. Movement.
Build started.
I find that happens too, where there's that pause between when you decided to push a button and then something showed up.
Yep, async is hard. All right, so that's happening. Publishing. Publishing, finished. Gulp just ran, because that's part of my pre-published step. Now it'll actually do the Razor precompile. There you go. Running Razor view precompilation. And updated the IS file and published. Well, now it's running ms deploy because it does that as the last step. Come on. Right. So let me, if I click on this, it opens in Visual Studio, which is probably not what anybody wants. Do this. All right. And so here's my publish output. You can see I have no views. All right. No views folder. And what I do have is this thing down here, live.asp.net.precompiled-views.dll. So we took all the views that were in the application, we compiled them into a companion assembly with a well-defined known name, which is the name of your application DLL plus .precompiled-views at the end of it, so that we can find it when the application boots. If that DLL is present, MVC will load those views instead of the ones that it might find on disk. Okay, so we give precedence to that DLL. So if I did include my views here, they still wouldn't get used, but I chose to ignore them in my publish output because I don't need them anymore because I have them as precompiled views. That will mean that when the application starts, I don't have to incur the cost of loading Roslyn, parsing all of my Razor files and compiling them into C# and then an assembly and then loading it into the application. It's already done for me.
Is the reason, not to harp on this too much, but like, how come it's not just a checkbox or a equals true?
When?
You know what I mean? To light this up, you had to go and do all that schmutz. Is it because there are no hidden things anymore in .NET? Like there's no.
I mean, this is the constant tension between building a framework that is now modular and composable of smaller parts, and a wizard experience where you go click next, click next, click next, checkbox, done, right? And our challenge as framework designers is to try and find that balance between those two worlds. Now, this is pretty raw right now. Now, I mean, to be frank, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I added a .NET tool, a .NET CLI tool, which we've all talked about before. I mean, there's a few of them in here.
That seemed cool, but then it didn't just like light up. You had to do that, and that just looks
right. But there is no mechanism for project tools to affect the action of your project. You have to compose them in the way that you want, right? So a project tool is
looking for smarter defaults. Like it would be interesting to be able to light up or turn on precompiled views without having to copy paste from somewhere. Like you couldn't do that from memory.
I totally agree.
And even you could not do that from memory.
And I totally agree. And in the MS Build world, that will be the case.
Okay,
it'll just
that's what I want to hear.
It'll be a property that you'll turn on in the MS Build file. Precompiled views is true. Okay. And then, because that's how MS Build works, Project JSON /.NET CLI /project tools don't work that way. They're not a build system. It's a project file that you can compose other command line tools into, and then it gives you little hooks. It says, well, I'm about to publish. Do you want to run anything from the command line? And it's basically a batch script, right? And so this is the differing philosophies about how to build a project system. Many people think that MS Build does too much and that it's not the right project. It's not the right format for a project file. But for better or worse, it does a lot of stuff, and it's what .NET is built on, and we're going to be able to leverage that when we move to the MS Build project system very shortly. Right now, we don't have that, and so you have to compose stuff at the command line, essentially, because that's what the .NET CLI is. It's a command line environment.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that happened, and that's good, and as I said, you'll avoid the cost of stuff having to be loaded. I didn't really have to change much else in my app. I don't think I had to change anything in my startup CS, and I didn't have to change anything anywhere else. I mean, I have the change.
That makes sense. I mean, you shouldn't have to do anything code related.
Well, I didn't, because the only features. Oh, I did change one thing. I lie. In program CS, is I did this thing. So we have a new package that is intended. It's Azure App Services Integration, which you would have seen in my project JSON, although I didn't call it out. It's down here. Azure App Services Integration, preview 1-final. I put that there in place of what we used to have the use IS integration there. This method now allows us to do multiple things that will light up when you're running in Azure. So, right? And so this enables the IS integration, because when you run on Azure App Services, you run in IS. And so we put that middleware and piece of logic in there for you. It'll also run an IS fine locally, because that middleware just runs whether you're on IS on Azure or locally. The other thing it does is it hooks up a logger factory provider so that your log messages go out to the correct location in Azure App Services so that they work with features of the Azure App Services experience. So if I go over to the portal, which I happen to have open over here, this is the portal site for the stand-up site, Live ASP.NET. And you can see in the diagnostics log section, there are these toggles: application logging to file system, application logging to blob storage. These don't work with ASP NET Core in 1.0. Okay, when you tick these only do things if you're running full framework, because the way they worked is they kind of blasted stuff into the web.config file to set a bunch of stuff to redirect logs, assuming you were using system.trace and those type of things. Well, now if you turn this on here, and I probably did this on the live site, so who knows what will happen, then I can choose the log level of what type of logs I want to see come through here, and this maps up to the different logging verbosity that we have in the ASP NET Core logging abstraction. And so now I can get those logs flowing through into Azure. Now, so how do you see those? Well, I've deployed the site, so I know the code is running, and I've turned it on. And to actually see them, you can do a few things. I think you can use VS, and you can go to the Site Explorer thing in the Cloud Tools stuff, and you can drill down and see the file system. I tend to just use the Kudu console. So if I go up here to Advanced Tools, and I go, this will take me to the Kudu console for this website, right, which looks like this. And in here, you can go and look at the files in the site. And if I go to the root of my site, now this is not the ASP.NET site, this is Azure's idea of what the root of the site is. So there's a lot of other stuff here.
Azure laid the files.
Correct. It has a folder called log files. So now the application logs, you can see them here, all right? So they're now being routed out into this folder because I ticked that box. Simply. That's as simple as that. Now, the way this thing works in Azure, in App Service, I think, is that if I looked at the little icon, I think it stays on for 24 hours, 12 hours. There you go. So it only turns, it's designed for you to you turn it on when you need to diagnose something, right? Or more logs. Same for the blob. It will also redirect to blob storage if you tick that on as well. So if you want to store in blob, that setting is persistent, unlike the file system one. The reason they turn this off after 12 hours is that you'll very quickly fill up your hard drive in your Azure App Service, and you don't want to do that. And so they only allow this one to be persistent, whereas this one turns off after 12 hours. So we did that. So that's kind of nice. You can actually now get ASP NET Core logs when you're running in Azure with very, very simply just by virtue of this one method on your web host builder. I think that was the only code I actually changed on the site. I mean, I can quickly check because I have the commit here. I changed IS integration to Azure App Services. I fixed some of my design time data wasn't using HTTPS URLs, so I fixed that because I was getting a cross sort of zone warning in the browser. And then this is just some local variable stuff. Oh, I turned off console logging when I wasn't in development. It's actually not a good idea to log everything to the console in production because it's really slow. And we're going to change our templates to not do that. So I just made that change in here so that I only do that if I'm currently in development. That's pretty much it. There's no other code changes. Everything else here is Project Json and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was pretty seamless. And then when I deployed, it took about 3.5 minutes to deploy, which if you remember from the stand-ups we did,
Is he dropping for you?
His voice is his audio is dropping. Yeah.
Sorry, am I back now?
Your audio's been dropping a little bit.
Yeah, I think my computer got a little busy. Yeah, I deployed in about 3.5 minutes on Azure because I have all those flags. I have that config value set that we talked about in the stand-up a few months ago that uses the temporary drive to speed up the GitHub-based deployment. So it took about 3 minutes, and then after it deployed, when I went to the site and hit it, I think it took less than 10 seconds to come up, which is the fastest it's ever come up on first request. And a large part of that is due to the fact that the views were pre-compiled. So that was really, really good to see. So yeah, there are other features in 1.1. I didn't use them. So there is response compression, which was actually a PR, which we accepted. I'm getting compression from IIS on that website, so I don't need to use the response compression middleware, so I didn't use it. There is a response output caching middleware now. So output caching from ASP.NET on System Web was a feature that would do in-memory caching of responses in the web application itself. And so now we have a middleware that does a similar thing. And we'll continue to add features to that middleware over time, but you can now put that in the pipeline and get in-memory response caching from there. What else did we do? We did a whole bunch of other stuff. We did the filters as middleware, or middleware as filters thing that you mentioned. There's a whole bunch of stuff. People should go and read the blog post to see if there's anything of interest to their applications, but I certainly hope there will be. There are no new templates for 1.1. There wasn't a Visual Studio tooling update, and so to use it, you simply have to install the new 1.1 runtime. You get the installer from .NET, just like you did previously. There's also a Windows Server Hosting Bundle installer, just like we had previously. That installs the new .NET Core runtime. And the update to the CLI, and yeah, then you go from there. You update your stuff in your project JSON, you do a restore, brings down all the packages from NuGet, and your application is now running on 1.1.
Cool. That doesn't sound too bad. And I appreciate your detail.
Okay.
Just saying, it's good to have detail.
We have some questions.
Yeah.
We do, and we're an hour in too, so let's not go too long.
Yeah, for 50 minutes.
Will the Azure Service feature work with Linux web apps now in previews, or does it presume an IIS-based host?
Just say that again?
Does the Azure Service feature, the middleware you just lit up, work with the Linux web app, or does it presume an IIS-based host?
So Asp Net Core, I believe, right now doesn't work, or I should say the other way around. The Azure App Services Linux support that has only just been announced in preview currently only supports PHP and Node, I believe. Asp Net Core support is coming. I don't know the full details of that. I think it might be related to running in Docker, though. So I think you, in order to run in the Linux stuff in ASP,
Did he lock up?
you have to deploy in a Docker container, I think. I'm not sure. I might be wrong. But we will do the work to figure out how to get that to integrate with whatever portal features like logging redirection that they will support on Linux. But we're going to take our lead from whatever Azure App Services supports.
Cool.
Good point, though. I mean, if you go and call something, the Azure App Service middleware, it should light up on both.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we'll do our best. Unfortunately, when we started building that middleware and shipped it, the Linux stuff didn't exist.
Didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
So we only had to make it work for the one environment they had.
The interesting question will be whether it is whether there'll be a app service on Windows or app service on Linux, or if it'll just detect and light up. It'd be nice if it just worked.
It certainly won't be IIS. So to the gentleman's point, or I don't know. Actually, I'm assuming.
No, of course it won't be IIS. It'll be whatever they use. But the point is, it should just work. You shouldn't have to pick the right package based on.
And so, as I said, based on what Azure App Services will support in terms of, I can go into the portal if I'm running on Linux and tick a box and have application logs go there. That feature today only works with ASP.NET, is my understanding. So even if you're running PHP and you tick that box, it does nothing. And so we'd have to take, depending on what infrastructure they put in place to support whatever features they want, we'll do the other side of the work to make that work.
Makes sense.
Any other questions?
Does a response compression middleware, that's a NuGet package?
Yes, it is a NuGet package. And it does gzip.
Some of these questions are complicated. No disrespect to the people asking them, but they're not. They don't quite. Klaus says, C# support for WebAssembly in ASP Net Core. What do you mean? Are you trying to
right?
Yeah.
But
so
what are you trying to do? Compile C# into WebAssembly?
Yeah, that's not the first time that's come up. Plenty of people have looked at the.
But how are they imagining that would actually work, though?
Imagining a world similar to what. No, the other one, Script used to do, where you would write your client-side code in C#, and the BCL you would be given would be not the .NET Framework's BCL, but some sort of client BCL that was composed of whatever client-side packages and APIs you wanted. And then you would just write C# and it would compile down to JavaScript. In this world, you would write C# and it would compile down to WebAssembly, and then that would run natively in the browser. Yeah, there have people have spoken about that. I know Miguel has talked about it publicly as a really cool thing to investigate. Edge is currently looking at supporting WebAssembly. I think Chrome or one of the other ones is also looking at it. It's very nascent. It's something that's being talked about a lot. it's not something that you can just like go and use yet, is my understanding.
And it's very much along the lines of how the question was. It would
But
be
still,
cool,
what
right?
is it going to do? Like, what are you talking about doing?
Well,
Like,
to
You're
write,
talking about writing all your client code in C#.
well, in writing at least high performance, like, right? Because WebAssembly is very fast.
There's been a half dozen ways to do that before, and honestly, if you want to do that, that's what TypeScript is for. Like, TypeScript is what JavaScript.
Not C#. I don't want
C#, but it's what C# people wish
to
it
look
would.
at what you're saying now and say you're just dismissing this as the latest version of, oh, I want to write stuff in C#.
Let me rephrase. I'm dismissing. Well, one, this is like the 5th time we try to do this.
I know.
So I am dismissing it somewhat. Like,
well, we. You mean we, the industry?
I personally am dismissing it because it is so freaking early. Like, you know what I mean? They're not even 0.1. Edge just blogged about it. I'm all about the whole JavaScript is the assembly language of the web. I've been the person to say that forever. But I feel like that's just another abstraction layer that's going to hide leaky
maybe
stuff.
I mean WebAssembly is that's kind of the promise of WebAssembly, though, right? Is that it is
If
very
they do it right.
fast optimized code that the browser can run without a compilation step, essentially. And then it opens up a whole world of possibility of like, well, how did I generate the WebAssembly? It's like, well, you can use whatever you want to generate the WebAssembly. So obviously developers are going to go, well, I like C#, so wouldn't it be cool if I could take C# and turn that into WebAssembly? I totally expect people to do that, whether it's Ruby or C++ or because they're already doing it with C++. It would be cool. We have no plans, firm or otherwise, to do that. So it is very early, and I have not given it any thought. And frankly, my team wouldn't be the team to build it anyway, because my team owns .NET Server, not turning C# into WebAssembly. But maybe another team will do it. But it is interesting. There's a lot of other questions here.
Yeah.
So could there be an ASP NET meta package to help alleviate the versioning pain? Yes, there could. The problem is that once you have a meta package and you reference it, you get every single assembly from all of the packages that are referenced by that meta package in your bin folder. So you go from being, I only get the packages that I referenced in my bin folder, the whole pay-for-play model, and only the API from those packages showing up in IntelliSense, to let me create an ASP Net Core meta package that has one version, which includes all 200, or I think it's like 140 packages that we ship, and now I get 140 DLLs in my output folder for Hello World. So that's why we haven't done that yet. So we're looking at ways that we can get the benefits of the meta package when it comes to versioning without having to pay the cost of restoring everything from NuGet, copying it all in your bin folder, and publishing it all to your app server, and having to load all those things into the application as IL and JIT them and blah, blah, blah. There are costs associated with doing everything in a meta package. So it's a tempting solution, but it is not the right one. So we haven't done it yet.
All right, well, there's this complicated one, a little bit, from Giovanni. So he's asking, he wants to start an ASP Net Core app from Node as a child process, but then he wants to do a graceful shutdown in Windows. So in Linux, he can send a SIGINT signal.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
good luck.
Yeah.
You can send a Control-C. It's really hard.
Yeah.
You really want that to, doctor, it hurts when I do that.
Well, no, I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable thing to want to be able
Launch
to
a
do. As you said, in
process
Linux,
from
you can do it really simply.
Why would you not just, couldn't he just launch a shell script? Why is he trying to launch a .NET Core executable and do it from there?
Because he wants to launch, he has an ASP.NET Core app. He needs to launch Node as a child process to do something. And then he wants to be able to gracefully shut that down at some point in the application.
Do a graceful shutdown in Windows.
On Windows specifically.
process.
On Linux, it's easy. On Linux, you send a SIGINT and you can handle it, and it's just part of the sort of contract of processes. In Windows,
you send a
we have
WM close
Control-C.
and hope it works.
Yeah, in Windows, sending a Control-C is convoluted and difficult, and depending on who's on the other side of the Control-C, different things may or may not happen. So, yeah, it's hard. What else we got? When the final version from Hisham. I'm not quite sure which one Hisham is referring to. If it's of 1.1, as I said, that'll be in a few weeks, probably before December. So probably sometime this month, which is November. It's November 1st. So that'll be out soon. What else? More work from first request to app startup, like other than making a request to itself, like await start, and then register my microservice to others. you can then be confident it's fast on the first request. So to be clear, any code that you write in your program main or that you write in the configure services or configure method that executes during the execution of that method, not lambdas that you pass into other methods because they may not run, that all runs before first request. The server doesn't start listening until your configure method on your startup class has returned. So you can put any code you want in there and that will run before first request. The cost, but that's a trade-off, right? Because that code now contributes to the time it takes before your app can serve the first request, as opposed to perhaps postponing some work so that it's lazy, so that it only occurs when someone asks for a request, which is what MVC does. It doesn't compile your views until someone asks for the view, because the first request may not be for the view. It might be for an API, or it might be for some static files. And so why would we slow down the startup of the site to do that? Pre-compiled views lets you take that specific work that MVC does on first request for a request that has a view and do it ahead of time. Other things that we could look at doing that for dependency injection, we do a bunch of stuff in dependency injection. So once you've filled the container and then we sort of resolve the container, based on when people first ask for things out of the container, we generate code and compile it in memory. So we generate expression trees and then we call expression.compile so that the next time someone calls it, it's much faster. So you pay that cost the first time you access services out of the DI container. We have experimented with ways that we could potentially do that stuff at compile time, so that you set up your DI container the same way in code, but as part of the compilation process, we analyze your setup code, or we run your setup code, and then we do all that expression compilation effectively at compile time, generate more C# and compile that into your app. Right? So we kind of do pre-compiled DI is another idea that we have toyed with. Again, no firm plans of when we were going to do that, but we have got functional prototypes of various ways that we could achieve that. And there are lots of things in ASP NET Core and .NET Core, mostly ASP NET Core, that are lazy, that don't do the work until someone asks for it, which means you pay the cost at runtime once, but it might be nice in some cases to be able to pay the cost at compile time instead. Now that means the compile time will take longer. So what do you value more? Do you want your compile time to be as short as possible so that when you're coding in Visual Studio, you can make a change and iterate really quickly? Or do you want it to be, you'll pay that cost at development, at production time? Or do you want the best of both worlds? Do you want like a mode where, this is what I want a mode where when I'm in Visual Studio, everything just kind of happens in a way that's optimized for development. Right? So compilation should be super quick. I should cache the world out of everything and make sure I can reuse everything I possibly can and don't pay for stuff until I have to, so that things are really, really quick. And then when I go to production, I am happy to spend more time compiling so that the application starts up as fast as possible. It generates the most optimal code that it can, but it may take longer to compile. So .NET already does things like this today, like has debug compilation versus re-release compilation. But in ASP.NET, we've typically done that by having dynamic compilation, stuff that happens on the server, and then a way to invoke that at compile time to avoid that cost, using things like precompile. In DNX, we did a whole bunch of crazy stuff that was along these ideas, where we had this kind of this inner loop or development time model, where when you were doing development, we just cached everything in Visual Studio, and then we shuttled all the bytes over to IIS so that you didn't have to repay the compilation cost when the request came in. That stuff all went away when we went to .NET Core, but we do intend on bringing it back to make the development time experience in Visual Studio as fast as it can possibly be, while still keeping it as .NET.
Cool. Here's a question from Mateus. He's asking, has Azure hosting been fixed with the newest version if you upgrade the deploy fails? You just showed a demo, though, where you had upgraded to the latest version, right?
Yeah, it works fine. So we coordinate with the Azure App Services team so that when we release a preview or a release of the Microsoft.NET Core.app shared framework for .NET Core, that goes to Azure on the same day or like the day before. So that by the time you get the packages, you can push it to Azure App Services and it should work. It doesn't work if you're using like daily builds or if you're building it yourself, right? Because they don't have that shared framework that you just built on Azure App Services.
Cool.
Yep.
So your buddy are more templates planned, maybe one with pre-done backend and role management and so on.
Are more templates planned? No. So
like what's another the .NET New plan, and then there's the template.
So .NET New, there is a .NET New plan of a much more enhanced .NET New story that is much more pluggable. You can install templates from the command line from packages in NuGet or point them in GitHub repos. We had all these great ideas and a bunch of code was written. I'm not actually sure of what the timeline is for that stuff. I know bunch of it is functional, but the team is busy working on the MS Build conversion and getting the tools finalized, than adding more features. And so, I mean, we're doing this trade-off, right? Like, we need to continue to move towards doing the MS Build work, and be very selective about what feature work we do, because any feature, I mean, unfortunately, it is somewhat zero-sum. Any developers that we have who are working on features in the runtime or otherwise aren't working on getting the tooling stuff done. So we have to do that balance.
There's some good discussion too here. Following up to that, some people are pointing the question, or pointing them to the ASP NET boilerplate, ASP NET MVC boilerplate templates, which is an example of the community building out some templates and stuff. So there are options out there that are looking to the community.
Yeah, of course. And like the community, the Syed's what's it called, Sidewaffle. And the VS template pack, and there's Yeoman, and like there are many ways that we can deliver templates. But in terms of our team shipping templates, Visual Studio, the only template that we've talked about adding so far for Asp Net Core is an HTTP services template, which is kind of like a microservice. Like, it's the thing I showed a couple of weeks ago, where it's a single file, program main, a couple of lines to boot the Kestrel server and add a GET request, and then you run, and that's it. Right, single file HTTP service template. That's something that we'll probably end up doing fairly soon. But other than that, we haven't got any other.
I really would like that. That would be nice.
Yeah, a lot of people have indicated they would like that, and so we are looking at doing that. So
because every other framework can do that.
Yeah, and we can do it. It's just we don't have a template for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I think we better wrap up.
Yeah,
right.
I'm sorry. We are now 70+ minutes into it. We have to go and ship the thing. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for your patience, everybody, and thanks for your questions. And we will see you next week. Dramatic zoom out.
Engaged.
Go. Dramatic zoom out. It's so dramatic. Still looks crooked.
It's always crooked. I think your little post-it note leveling system has been lost by the cleaners.
Uh-oh.
Okay.